In Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 through 7, we read of the Israelites quarreling with Moses at Rephidim in the wilderness of Sin because there was no water to drink. Two terms are used in this text to describe their actions. First is the word meribah, and the verb rib, from which we get meribah, translated contend, in this passage means to bring a lawsuit or sue someone for wrongdoing. In essence, the Israelites accused God of breaking the covenant, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Exodus 17:7. Since they could not bring a lawsuit against God, they directed their revolt against Moses, his representative, and were ready to stone him. Exodus 17:4. Stoning an offender to death after due process was an accepted legal remedy. Theologian Edmund Clowney notes, quote, "Stoning is not mob violence but judicial execution by the community, with witnesses throwing the first stones," end of quote. The second word used in this passage is massa. The verb nasa, from which the term massa is derived, means to test or put someone on trial. In the context of this passage, the Israelites charged God with being a covenant breaker and put him on trial. But in so doing, they stood guilty of condemnation before a holy and a righteous God. How was this legal tension resolved? God told Moses to take the rod with which he judged Egypt, gather the elders of Israel, and go before the people to the rock in Horeb. God told Moses that he would stand before him there on the rock, and he instructed Moses to strike the rock with his rod of judgment. The rock symbolized the Lord, which Paul later identified as Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians 10:4. Though the Israelites were guilty of contending with God and justly deserved punishment, God took the penalty and executed justice. The Lord was not guilty, yet he bore the judgment to meet the legal requirement and resolve the tension. In this event at Horeb, we see the enactment of God's covenant grace. In the words of the hymn writer Julia Johnston, what was shown there was grace, grace, God's grace, grace that will pardon and cleanse within. Grace, grace, God's grace, grace that is greater than all our sin. The result of this adjudication was not death in the wilderness from thirst, but life through drinking the living water. Jesus, the rock of our salvation, was stricken on the cross of Calvary in our place. In him and through him, we get the living water to quench our thirst. Jesus said to the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Have you asked Jesus to give you that living water? Unfortunately, as the ancient prophet Jeremiah noted, Many have rejected the fountain of living water and have hewn themselves cisterns, broken cisterns that hold no water. Our deepest longings are satisfied only in Jesus Christ. Money won't do it. Possessions won't do it. Power won't do it. St. Augustine said it so well. "O God, we are made for you. Our hearts are restless until we find our rest in you." One man who found his fulfillment in Christ was Malcolm Muggeridge. He was a noted British journalist and media personality. He lived most of his life as a devoted atheist. By divine providence, he met Mother Teresa during his later years while making a documentary on her life. He was profoundly influenced by her, whom he called the light which never could be extinguished. Under the influence of Mother Teresa, he converted to Christianity and eventually joined the Catholic Church. Malcolm wrote these words, "I may, I suppose, regard myself or pass for being a relatively successful man. People occasionally stare at me in the streets. That's fame. I can fairly easily earn enough to qualify for admission to the higher slopes of the Inland Revenue. That's success. Furnished with money and a little fame, even the elderly, if they care to, may partake of trendy diversions. That's pleasure. It might happen once in a while that something I said or wrote was sufficiently heeded for me to persuade myself that it represented a serious impact on our time. That's fulfillment. Yet I say to you, and I beg you to believe me, multiply these tiny triumphs by 1,000,000, add them all together, and they are nothing, less than nothing, a positive impediment measured against one draught of that living water Christ offers to the spiritually thirsty, irrespective of who or what they are. Through the prophet Isaiah, God said, "Oh, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come, buy and eat." Why do you spend money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me, and eat what is good, and let your soul delight itself in abundance. Isaiah 55:2. Friend, have you tasted Jesus Christ, the living water? If not, won't you respond to his invitation? He says, "Anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink. For the scriptures declare, rivers of living water will flow from his heart." John 7:38 and 39. I pray that you will come to Christ today to quench your thirst. Do not wait. Come now while he may be found. God bless you and have a wonderful week.